What is going on, Metaverse? Animositas here on Annie Knows, and really excited today to be joined by a very special guest. I have with me Kent Byers, the Chief Product Officer working over at Civitas with the team. And Kent, for those that don't know him, has had a really long and storied experience within the Web3 and Web2 gaming industry. So, Kent, pleased to have you with us today. I know you've worked on projects, the likes of which are Star Wars, Avatar, Transformers, and
Mhm.
now you've been really in the Web3 space for a couple of years now. So why don't you share with us a little bit of your background for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm old. I guess that's the first thing. This is gonna kind of absolutely age me. I got into gaming really early. Obviously, just being a gamer for life. I think
Mhm.
most of us like we just have a lifetime of memories of games and things we played. And I got into the game industry quite early. It was still feature phones and PlayStation 2, and I've kind of been with it ever since. I've never got tired of building, always been in the space. Was able to get to a dream company of me as a child working on Star Wars. I don't think anything triggered more of like the nerd in me to kind of walk in, and then the plethora of like just Star Wars lore and things you just get pulled into. So I was there all the way until the door shut. So that's kind of maybe a bad memory and a sad memory, but definitely work with a lot of great people and great memories there. After that, just kept building and got into the film industry for a while, and that's what got me into Battle Angel Alita and a few other things and worked in that. But again, my passion's games and making games and engagements and experiences for people. And I definitely kept my eye on Web3 even before that. And I got involved in different ways, but I was very influenced by just a friend I have, actually like Gabby. I think everybody's heard of Gabby before, and
Mhm.
YGG is famous. And he was posting quite a bit about it back in like 2017, 2018, about little things he was testing. And he was kind of talking his thoughts about it. And that was already kind of triggering my mind and already thinking about, oh, this is cool. Like, how would this work? How would that work? And I think that's kind of the first steps as you are as like a creator. And then once I joined Directive Games, which is where I am now, I kind of took over that role as like the chief product officer. And as I was sort of looking at what we could do in Web3, and in this studio was also just filled with amazing talent. Some of the first guys on EVE Online, guys that founded Dice, guys that really worked on games that I played and like set the standard too of like, games we all play today in reference. And really kind of thought about what would we make and what does Web3
Mhm.
mean to me? And there's a lot of people who ask questions like, why would you want to make this on Web3? You could just make this game on this other platform. But to be honest, like these are same arguments I heard when mobile came and people didn't want to make mobile games. Why would you want it on a phone? You can have it on a PC or have it on a console. And I think these are really bad arguments because I think our job is also game developers and people trying to tell a story and an experience for people. It isn't necessarily about an argument over one platform over another. It's the type of experience you want to deliver, right?
Mhm.
And I think we have board games that we like. Would you ever tell to someone who made a board game, why would you make a board game? You can make it on a PC.
Or you
Like,
could make
it's
a
not the
card game yeah.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that's not the point, right? And I think when you actually look at like amazing games or experiences made, sometimes it just comes out of like one feature. It just comes over sometimes an accident, right?
Mhm.
It comes over one thing that you want to tell. And I used to always love the story back in the day on like Left 4 Dead. And it came out with the developers who were just playing with a mod on Team Fortress 2 when you had to push the cart and then all the scouts came out like
Mhm.
zombies and you had to shoot off all the scouts and they're like, oh, what if this was zombies?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of how Left 4 Dead started. And little things like that can inspire you. And then you think of an experience and you think of it. And that's very kind of similar to, Civitas. What we loved about Web3 was community. And what we
Mhm.
saw was like, I was just amazed at seeing like the energy for communities behind projects on Discord and on Twitter. And they were just like, I love this. And they were engaged so early on and they were talking about it. They're figuring out how their involvement was. And that just inspired me so much. And then it really came into thinking like, okay, well, what kind of game actually is not just about having players in your game, that's actually social connections have to be created and people need to work together to actually achieve things. And sure, you can say, hey, throw them in a game, people make their own guilds. But I think that kind of fragments community sometimes. It really separates play styles like, okay, these are power players, these are not power players. Okay, these are whales, these are not whales. And it kind of really separates your community into the play styles,
Mm.
which might seem okay at the front, but you just, like you said, you're fragmenting the community, right? And I really wanted to think about how do we get people that could play together with different play styles, and you build a relationship and you really work to these bigger goals. And that's kind of how that led into this idea of like sub-DAOs. And then the 4X side and that kind of strategy kind of game, really kind of us looked at what makes sense for Web3 for like a tokenized game. And for us, we wouldn't have made a game like Street Fighter than thrown a token into it. And there's definitely a lot of games now that are taking very fun genres and taking very fun games, and they're just kind of throwing a token into it because that's just what you do. And then I think that's kind of why you're seeing a reaction from a lot of traditional gamers, like, why is there a token in this? Why does this need it? But I think when you sort of build a game that is an economy driven game, and that comes a lot through our Eve heritage, then these things just become something natural. It's something you expect in the game, not something that you react like, why is that there? So we looked at a game that made sense of having correct economy sinks in a game, and it made it feel like more part of it and natural, not something you're trying to kind of Frankenstein into the game design.
Mhm.
So these were things that we went through. And then obviously there was a lot more steps that went into it. But that was kind of a big part of my journey in Web3, like designing this game almost a year before we even started trying to raise money for it. It's just really thinking deeply into how things work and why. And we weren't in a race. We weren't just trying to get out there for the bull market and get it in. We just really wanted to take our time and really understand what we're making and having that like a longer term vision. And definitely just onboarding the rest of the studio to it. It takes a lot of bit of work just to get people's mind into it and ask their own questions. So it's not just my Web3 journey. I think it's like the company's Web3
Mm.
journey. And I think as we onboarded more staff and they understood it, it wasn't, they kind of got off like looking at the bad PR that you kind of see on news sites. And they really thought about going, okay, cool. Like, hey, there's still some issues we have here, but actually making a game like this makes sense. And now this is exciting.
Mm.
And now we're actually like interviewing, and I just tweeted an article of some of the new talent and amazing guys we brought in from like Crusader Gangs, RuneScape, like guys we're bringing in that have been doing this, longer than I have. And I've been doing it for almost 20 years. And, they're coming in this and they're looking at it, the idea and what it could be, and they're excited. And that's kind of when you're getting onto the
Mm.
right thing. And that should
Yeah.
be and that's when you're getting it, when you're getting like really veteran game designers and people in the industry, and they're not looking at you like, what are you making? Why? They're like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I can see how this could work. This is powerful stuff. And again, it's like a reinsurance that we kind of see that we know we're on the right track.
Yeah, and I love really the basis that you're building the studio around, which is Web3 is a tool, and you need to make sure that you're applying it in the right ways, not just
Yeah.
as you said, sticking it onto a token and then maybe just creating NFTs out of whatever the
Mhm.
assets are that you would have from a standard Web2 type of game.
Yeah.
So when I think about Civitas, there's I would say three core elements as I understand the game and the vision. The first one that I thought elaborated very well is this interactive cooperative mode where you're focused on engaging with other players, and you've got the sub-DAO structure where essentially you've got players that form, maybe for lack of a better word, a guild type of framework based on where they are in the game, in the 4X with their land plots, and you get to do trading, diplomacy, and so on. Um, the second part that appeals to me personally as someone who enjoys base builder type of games is really that development of your own plot of land. You're
Yeah.
out resource gathering, and you can do your own kind of personal research and upgrading and so on. And for people that are builders that like building things, I think that's going to be really appealing to them. And the
Mhm.
third part is this kind of open world framework where you've got your chosen characters. These are the name of the NFTs that are your avatars that travel around with you. You get to play mini games. You can discover rare items through geolocation.
Yeah.
using augmented reality. So all of this interaction in kind of a real world setting. Is that a pretty good assessment of the major elements of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that touches there's definitely, like, smaller things, like, in between there, like, we didn't even touch on, like, the city P versus P on,
Mm,
like, points of interest around the world, and then a bunch of other kinda smaller things you can do, but yeah, those are definitely a lot of, like, the core mechanics of areas that we're kinda looking at between that community collaboration, people kind of focusing and developing on their land, and then things you can kinda be doing around you in geolocation.
and so I think one of the questions I've gotten is, okay, how does this 4X going to work, and
Yeah,
why does it make sense to be Web3? What I've
yeah,
shared with people is, as a 4X fan, honestly, I don't even need any Web3 elements. I don't actually need the geolocation. Just
yeah,
having the concept of a cooperative 4X that's meaningful. You get
mhm.
multiplayer 4X games often, but there's not really true co-op elements.
No.
That's cool in and of itself to me. Like I would play
Yeah.
that game just because.
Yeah, it's definitely and I think we struggle a lot when people ask us, "Oh, what is this game like?" And like, "Nothing." Like, I really and I think that's why we're bringing on a lot of guys that have been making Forex games for the last 15, 18 years on their own, and they're like, "Hey, this is cool." And,
Mm-hmm.
they at points in their career, they've kinda told me that they've thought of games similar to the idea of like more collaborative kind of
Right.
experiences, but it just didn't make sense as much on traditional gaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like how would that work and how would you get enough players to make it interesting that you could do it?
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of great projects out there going to Web3, but I think we're one of the most actual Web3 games, not because we're just doing NFTs and we're doing like a token on it or yielding or staking or something
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of DeFi layer, but we're actually building mechanics that really make why Web3 made sense on this.
Yeah.
And I think that's something really kind of special. And we're kind of reinventing the genre, which is kind of the whole point of gaming. It's the iterative process, right? That you sort of take the generations and add new features as technology comes that you're trying to improve and do something else. And I think we're really treading on new grounds and kind of bringing some new life into 4X. And you know, there is like a type of player that likes 4X games for sure. And there's a lot of people like, oh, just can't get into that kind of complexity for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a reason why we wanted these other kind of game modes, like with geolocation and doing other things. And I think we've kind of talked about it before that I'm really interested or really want to find the right path for this like non-linear gameplay. And I love the idea when I think of the real world of just like I'm in a city right now and you're in your city and everybody's doing different jobs and they have different things, but the city's functioning, right? And you all have your
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities or things. And I love this idea that people can be coming in and they could be a citizen and maybe they don't want to focus as much on land like you do. You have a strategy, you want production lines, you want to build these things, you can develop that. And your city can kind of see your goals and what you're doing and kind of helping everyone. But maybe like I just really want to be outside. I'm an outdoor person. I'm in a city where I love to be outside. I'm doing geolocation missions. I'm getting events. I'm finding treasure chests. I'm playing mini games. I'm collecting resources. I'm bringing all these things in that are still like net positive things helping growth. And I'm a completely different player than you.
Mm-hmm.
And but when it comes into like how society has to grow in the rewards, we're equally important in terms of that growth with completely separate play styles. And I think that's kind of going to be the magic that we're going to find when it comes to the sub-DAO goals.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have your own players, you almost treating it like a sandbox experience. You're going to have quests and obviously things that help you and give you some guidance and seasonal events and other things going on that you can participate in that you can do. But really, you're kind of still choosing your own strategy based on how you want to advance. But the sub-DAO is going to be the one that's kind of like the glue that brings all the diversity of players together, which I think is so compelling for me. It really makes you kind of feel like I'm not being ostracized as a player because I'm not playing 40 hours a week or I'm not a power player. But I can be playing maybe just a couple hours a week doing my things, and I'm still showing that I'm really a valuable person in the community helping move things forward. And that's really great for casual players who get the feeling of being part of something pretty special. You know, you're
Yeah.
going to be seeing your sub-DAO in the news, like, oh, Singapore just achieved this and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, hey, I'm part of that. And then you start already feeling like you're part of something kind of bigger. And that's going to inspire people to try more, right? So I'm just so excited. Obviously we have a long road. I wish we could have the game out now, but yeah, we're making something quite special here.
Yeah, yeah, I love that mix between sort of the uber competitive and the casual players.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. I think of my parents because they love Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
So my dad's a gamer and has
Yeah.
been for for most of his life. So he'd be 100% into with me the base building and some
Yeah.
of the co-op side. But my mom, she would actually love just walking around and doing some of the mini games and, like you said, capturing some of those points in the geolocation side. And I could see a scenario in which we get them some of the characters and some of the land, and maybe they work together as a team
Yeah.
essentially to each do kind of the aspects that are most appealing to them. So
Absolutely.
so let me ask. So if I want to have a an Annie family sub DAO, what are the structures that I can put in place to make sure that as a family or as a guild or as a gaming DAO, I want to have this land all together within a single city. Can I do like a mint as a group in advance? Is there some way to make sure that I can play with some of the people that I want to, other than trying to buy everything up on the secondary market?
Yeah, that's really good question because we probably haven't worked through that specific kind of edge case right
Okay.
now. I think we're just kind of defining some of these things right now internally. So it's just kind of really good feedback or really good question to kind of hear that we can go, oh, hey, what about that scenario? What do we do know right now? And what we want is when you do purchase land, yeah, it's not random. You're not going to mint it and then find out, oh, hey, I'm part of the sub-DAO in Moscow. It's not going to be like a random thing. That I want the land purchasing to feel very player driven in terms of
Mhm.
like this is a choice you made and you wanted it. So you're going to see the different sub-DAOs, you're going to see the tower, you're going to see the land kind of where it is and sort of position to everything else around you. Oh, it's a mountain here and a river there. You're going to see what the involvement or what you can be doing with your crystals and sort of like modifying that kind of terrain and really being a part of it. So it's very player chosen. Like, I want to be here, I really
Mhm.
want to be part of this sub-DAO. Now the thing we haven't done is just kind of figuring out, hey, if I really want to be with my friend, how can we lock these in and purchase these things together so we're kind
Mhm.
of beside each other? So we probably need to solve that problem, but it'll probably be something we'll be definitely thinking about because, like I said, we really want this to be player driven. Like it's a
Mm.
choice you made of where you want to be, which to me I think is really exciting because then you start to already realize that if we all chose this location together, we already have something in common, right?
Mhm.
So that's really important to us too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And maybe we'll chat afterwards. I've got a couple example projects I could
Mm.
throw your way that I think I've done a pretty good job of managing that sort of complexity. Um,
Yeah, I would love to see that.
yeah. So I think the second part that maybe is really timely for us is your character and avatar minting.
Yeah.
So the chosen are I would say live, right? We're in the middle of the
Yeah.
Dutch auction process as we're recording this. And then we've got the
Mm.
whitelist and the public mint coming up afterwards. Um, so you shared, I think, as of right now, 5 different characters
Yes.
of the
6 if
initial
we
artwork.
include Ninsiku, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So we've got
So
the 6 characters. Go ahead.
so the in theory, I like to think of it as 12. It
Okay. Yeah.
is 6 characters, but each character has, a variant of it, and this is really going to be lore driven of, like, why this is happening, but there is gonna be some slight modifications to what their variant and how they work in
Hmm.
game. And it's different for each character. So like Ninsiku the Shaman, and then Ninsiku the Enlightened. And we
Hmm.
have lore that I think it's out on a Medium article. It's able to come out. Basically, it shows Ninsiku as he was the how he became a shaman, and then trials he went through on magic he was learning, and it basically enlightened him to the next phase of his kind of moves, you advanced, like
Hmm.
leveled up, and now he's Nasiko the Enlightened. And each character through this lore also has like little Easter eggs we're putting in on how they got connected to the tower, which is kind of really identifying like why are they the chosen? Like how do they
Okay.
actually become the chosen? But each character is different in terms of this transition. Like Tensiko is a personal journey he went on from this to the next. While Zola has a similar one. But some characters, it almost feels like it wasn't a transition. It could be something almost traumatizing that could have happened to them, or something else impacted them that
Yeah.
it almost really separated them. And the examples that I give kind of internally when I was kind of talking with the team about it is, if you thought of Anakin and Vader, right? Or, Gandalf the Gray and Gandalf the White, they're the same person in a sense, but they've gone through different types of things that kind of identify them as unique in their own way. So it's very similar for the Chosen. They're kind of the same character with that one, but each one has gone through different things or something impactful happened to them. And it's really about the world and the multiverse they came from that chose them, and how they kind of found out with the towers, which then kind of brought them together all into the same kind of, multiverse.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like that, in some cases it might be more of a longer term character arc where
Yeah.
they evolved, and in other cases there might be a very specific catalyst that you can
Yeah.
see and point to. So looking forward
Absolutely.
to hearing and seeing some more of the lore for these characters.
Yeah.
We know at least two, I think, formally named eras, right? We've got the ancient era,
Mhm.
and is it officially the cyberpunk era, or
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
So we know at least two, and we've seen, I think, teasers, and we have some
Mhm.
ideas from some others. Are there other era names or other numbers of eras that you all are imagining right now that you can share with us?
We're definitely imagining more, and there should be more. We want that idea, and that's like the fun of the game. So start imagining that we're all building the game today. We're all playing. We're starting from that ancient culture era. But the important thing we have with the Chosen and why we released the Cyberpunk is they're just completely, other side of the spectrum from ancient culture to cyberpunk, right? And we did this kind of on purpose, just so the community didn't think, oh, the game is just about this. If we just released shamans and, Zola, other ancient cultures, you're all going to think, oh, this is what the game's about then. You're just playing things from this era. So again, everything we do kind of has like a purpose, like an anchor point. So this is already to say, hey, there's a diversity here all the way from ancient magic spells to like cyberpunk. So now everything in between that can happen. And this starts letting us kind of say like, hey, as you're advancing through eras, all that kind of big spectrum is going to exist. So you are going to be building your sub-DAO from like, your straw huts until you have these kind of cyberpunk kind of cities. And you're still going to have those ancient buildings because you're going to have this diverse city, but you can now see the spectrum of like the line of advancement. And so we will be wanting characters that kind of come into those different eras and they have a purpose. Like imagine we need like a plague doctor, or we have characters from the Civil War, or we have other things from different eras. We can really kind of play with it. So we have these characters right now, and this kind of really starts showing us, and we can talk about the game and what they do. We want to now focus more on just showing gameplay and the land itself. And as we kind of get further through the game and we start kind of really seeing how these characters all work, we're definitely going to be identifying kind of gaps where like, hey, we need a character that's like a mechanic. They can repair things. We need a character that can do these kind of functionalities that we want. Where do we want to pluck that from different eras to make this kind of interesting and build a character around it? So, and I think we've talked about this a little bit on like the ETH Lizard AMA and other ones, is we do need to think about this as like games as a service, like a collection that kind of grows with purpose and meaning, where we can kind of say, hey, we're going to release this mechanic. There's only 200 of them, but we're going to release it, and they have this purpose within the game that they can kind of fulfill.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit more,
Yeah.
because I think this is one of the big challenges that a lot of studios are going to have difficulties with in the Web3 gaming space. Um,
Hmm.
in typical games, you've got some measure of power creep that you have to
Yeah.
introduce, right? Because you want players to continue to want to stay engaged, and if the
Hmm.
original version of a character that I get or an item is the most powerful, there's there's no incentive from a competitive standpoint with me pushing forward to try and get whatever's next,
Yeah.
whatever's been released. And so in traditional gaming, it's not really a problem. That's really more
Hmm.
of a feature. However, as we look at the way that most players in Web3 gaming today are investors, I think this is a short-term problem
Yeah.
that will eventually go away. But if I buy the Genesis version in Web3 right now, people assume, well, I was here first and earliest, and therefore, everyone else after me is sort of exit liquidity, and I want to make sure that my initial investment maintains its value. There's no dilution, and I think those two different maybe approaches are problems when it comes to Web3 gaming, because you need
Yeah.
to have an economy that allows you to grow and progress, which by
Yeah.
definition means the people that got in first, they have an advantage from like a knowledge standpoint and a game mechanics and understanding, and maybe they've been able to build
Mhm.
up assets and work in the game. But you also can't have those be the only NFTs or in-game assets that have meaning and value. So you guys have a pretty
Mhm.
interesting approach to trying to handle that with the characters and the upcoming releases. So maybe tell us how you're trying to address that issue.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of talks with the community in Discord or just even on Telegram, people who message me about this because yeah, their instinct is, oh, you're increasing supply. This is bad. And it's like, look, guys, games will not work unless we can solve this problem. And there's just like a fundamental feeling in Web3 that people, like you said, they're coming really from the investment side only, and they're thinking, hey, I want high quality, low supply, and a way to generate revenue all the time off everything. And I never want you to, don't ever mess with this, right?
Mhm.
And but games need to continue working. You need to evolve. You need to keep adding content. You might do interesting collabs. And how do you do this? And right now, at least with a lot of NFT marketplaces, it's messy. If you put every single one of these in a new collection, that might sound or look okay in the beginning, but you imagine 3 years later, you're trying to manage 20 collections and everything's broken up. It just doesn't work. It doesn't
Mhm.
work as games as a service. It doesn't work at all. What we're trying to do is find a nice balance in between, like how do we respect that people don't want to feel that you invested into an expensive NFT. And these are,
Mhm.
they're not cheap, right? They're not cheap no
Mhm.
matter what level you get into it. Even if you got them an extremely low ETH, it's expensive, right? Even if you bought up the secondary market of somebody else, it's a big choice that players have to make. So we want to respect that people who give us that kind of faith and want to come into this project, that we're looking out for their best interest too and making feel that this is something that it's worthwhile to invest in it. But how do we also scale that and it works with game
Mhm.
mechanics? And it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't an easy design to kind of come with. And maybe we have to make some tweaks because we're very early on. But the way that we're looking at it is we're going to have different characters, and each one of these characters has a fixed supply. So, Ninsiku has 750, and there'll never be more Ninsikus. We'll never make more. It's kind of guarded and it's kind of protected. And when it comes into like power creep, it's not necessarily, oh, one character was the first and this is the best that we'll ever make and everything less
Mhm.
is less. It's just they do things differently. It's meant to be like they have one skill or maybe one thing they do which is a little bit different than somebody else. And there's a lot of different diversity in terms of how you want to be using these characters. Maybe having Nitsiku in a certain type of building has the chance to modify the output. So now you're kind of making a strategy with different chosen in different buildings, or we have that kind of seasonal event, which is all about ancient cultures. So you're really kind of diversing your strategy with that, not necessarily with the idea that one is like a master chosen better than all in all scenarios. It won't be like that.
Mhm.
But What we want to do though is the ability that we can release new characters and people feel like, hey, we're not increasing the supply. Yes, the collection size itself increases, but your rare Ninsiku is always the rarest Ninsiku.
Mhm.
And that's always kind of protected and it's there. And it's always going to be in demand because, like I said, Ninsiku is going to have certain things that they can do in the game that the other chosen can't. And there's going to be a reason when somebody really wants Ninsiku. And the example that I kind of gave it to at least people who play a lot of games, it's like, when you play Fortnite or anything else, and you see a person with a skin from season 3 or the season 5 event or whatever it might be, you don't feel like, oh shit. You get more excited. You're like, oh shit, that's an OG. He is
Mhm.
wearing this skin at this event. Like, oh man, I wish I could have got that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's how you're going to be seeing these shamans and just other character release. That as this collection grows, Zola becomes more rare because there's more characters that kind of fill that collection. And if you have her and you're a holder of that, that's something like, wow, like that's pretty rare. I can't believe you got her. That's
Mhm.
cool. And you really stand out more, if anything else, into the pool, right? Instead
Mm.
of you're just seeing Nisiko now, but think about if you had 40,000 different characters. That Nisiko seems pretty rare in that kind of mix now in that pool. And I think it's more fun.
Mhm.
And it lets us sort of like, maybe we want an interesting collaboration with Illuvia. Maybe we do something with Marvel one day. Who knows, right? But it's that idea that things that have purpose and that make sense in the game, you can introduce it, and you're not really, like I said, diluting your character. We're just kind of
Mm.
adding and making that supply more diverse. But I think it actually makes your character more exciting. And I know it's very difficult right now because we're so used to NFT collections and how they fundamentally should function right now for these PFP collections. But we need to be thinking like, how do games work in this space?
Mhm.
How do we make this work so a game can actually last for a long time? Because a lot of the games right now don't worry about this because they're not really planning to be around in like 16 months.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, they don't, they're
I
going to
think
have
that's
issues of,
Yeah, I think that's right. That yeah, that the time horizon is very different
yeah,
for a Web3 uh focused project as opposed to a gaming focused project.
yes,
Um
yes.
and we look at, we look at what's going on in the industry as a whole. I really want to lean into this question about um how we're building and how we're leveraging the technology specifically on the AR side
Yeah.
for you guys, because there's been a lot of, maybe not a lot, there's been a number of gaming projects that have really tried to embrace this. I think probably the most obvious is Pokemon Go, that most
Mhm.
people listening to this are going to be familiar with.
I think
And
everyone should know that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and we've seen. I think we've seen a mixed reaction, right? People tend to like AR and they think it's cool, and then after a while they're like, oh, okay, well that was fun, but like I'm not seeing the meaningful engagement with it.
Mhm.
On one of the recent casts that I did on Gaming on the Block, we had Andrew Wall on from the Illuvium
Mhm.
team, and we chatted for a while about Oculus hardware and what we're seeing in the space with other companies. Sort of who's going to win the hardware wars for AR VR technology. I know this is a space that you guys are really, really trying to make sure you incorporate well. What's your take on the future of this AR tech and how this is going to evolve over the next years in Web3 in general?
I think the first thing to say is we're not new to AR. And anyone listening, do a quick Google search of Directive Games AR, and you'll see we were keynote speakers at Apple's conference twice, 2 years. Only games company do it, where we talked about the
Mm.
machines AR, and we were building in this space for years, and we have a very kind of strong understanding of what you can do and like what we want to do with it. And I think for us, definitely mobile is the focus for AR. Obviously we're excited about the idea, if Apple ever releases AR glasses, because I think we all can kind of agree when Apple does something, it's now mainstream. That's just the way it works, right? And we know that when they're not going to do something unless they kind of feel confident about it. And I think that's still quite far away, but we know it's in the horizon.
Mhm.
But you can see with like on your mobile phone, like AR interactions with it, it's fun. There's some cool things with it, But yeah, you can cross a line where it gets kind of gimmicky, or it's not quite as exciting, or like get tired of it. So I think what's important for us right now is not making AR a core mechanic that blocks people from the rest of the game, that you have to
Mm,
engage with this AR. And I think what makes it fun right now is like an additive experience.
mm,
So when it comes to sort of like getting resources in geolocation, there's a lot of resources we're going to have that can only be found in geolocation. And that makes it like there's an effort to go out and be strategic and get it. But we know at the same time, if you wall that off completely, it kind of hurts the game too, because people feel like, oh, I don't have access. And this is kind of why, if
right.
you have a chosen, you can send them out on expeditions. You're basically sending your chosen out on their own to do like missions in AR and go
Hmm.
try to find things. And they'll bring things back after a day or a week or whatever kind of you set as your parameters for that mission. But you lose the strategy of being focused on what you want to get. So they might bring back things you don't need or you don't want, but
Hmm.
that's just part of that sort of RNG of it. But
Right.
if you actually want to go out now, you're focused, you can kind of make choices like, I just want to be picking ore today. That's all I'm collecting. And
Hmm.
it's a very kind of like strategic choice, and you'll benefit more from that.
Mm.
Now, the AR mini games are really exciting to me, has that kind of fun experience for people who want to go outside to pick these resources, because they break up the grind, and they're
Hmm.
not meant to be like you're not invested of sitting for in front of a Starbucks for 45 minutes. They're meant to be like 2 minute of experiences, and you can do something fun, play some kind of mini game, get some rewards. And it's this idea that we know as developers, we can start releasing games quite often into the space and really giving you different things to kind of try and break up that grind. And
Hmm.
I think people will get into it. And the reason why we want to start incorporating some of these tools, which are not part of the core mechanic now, but kind of getting into it, is like I said, we're looking long term. We're looking at like, okay, where's technology going to be in 2 years or 3 years or five
Hmm.
years or 8 years or 10 years? And I think we can all agree that a full AR game wouldn't work today.
Hmm.
And even Pokemon Go is not really an AR game. It has some AR
Right.
features, but you can turn them off, because
Hmm.
even then they know like
And
putting that barrier, that wall right now isn't good
yeah,
game design. And we're doing the
yeah.
same. We're making sure we don't make this as a walled experience, but they're there and they're fun, and there's some incentives around it. So
Hmm.
people will have the chance to do it, but you're not forced into it. But as AR becomes more of a thing and it grows over time in tech and tools, I'm confident to know like in the future it's going to be a thing that we're all just used to, right?
Hmm.
And we're going to have a game that's already scaled and built up and have that kind of capabilities to grow with tech changes. And I think that's a big part of our focus, is just never thinking necessarily short term.
Right. Now that makes a lot of sense, and I think you want a game where people would rather use the technology than not, and it's not a competitive
Yeah.
disadvantage like it is in Pokemon Go, for instance.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
let's talk about some of the other core mechanics within the platform.
Mhm.
Because I think the cooperative and sort of the city government council side, that's really interesting to me as someone
Mhm.
who's more, I would say, more of a meta gamer. So let's say that I decide I want to run for a council spot in my city, and I want to be, I want to be one of the five leaders. You've mentioned, is five the right number? I think this is
It could change. Right now,
okay.
5 is sort
Yeah,
of the target,
10.
but we might have reasons it needs to be
Yeah.
more.
Okay, so we've got at the moment, planned for five council members who are the leads for each of the sub DAOs. In the game structure, is there going to be anything unique about each of those five spots that you envision? So am I just basically putting myself forward as I'm Annie and I want to be one of the five, or is if I have a particular interest in let's say negotiating with other cities, or I want to help run the finances for our sub DAO, or I want to focus on tech development. Is there a specific slot among the five that I would be effectively campaigning for, or is it basically we're going to choose the five best and they figure out how to kind of manage the tasks between them?
Right now, I kind of envision it as something you kind of campaign for, and not necessarily every sub DAO members they vote for campaign for the same things. Like I might have joined you're as a content creator, you
Hmm.
having like a voice outward. You can say, guys, I want to be head of propaganda. And I want to be on the council. I want to generate propaganda, media, broadcast what we're building, and really be the communicator of the politics, the decisions, a news site, like maybe your sub-DAO tunes into,
Hmm.
here's, Singapore weekly news from this sub-DAO. This happened
Yeah.
this week, and we've made this trade agreement, and one of the citizens crafted this. This mayor is making these decisions right now. These things are happening. Stay tuned. You can kind of see that you could
Hmm.
build your own sort of just local news outlet and propaganda and things are going on forward and just get people feel like you're in this kind of news world of it's
Hmm.
a living world and things are happening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you might have said, hey, I would love to be on the council. I'm going to be this voice. I'm going to do this. I'm going to maybe interview other citizens about the game and other things like that. And that's just a role and something really important. And you said, I'd love to be on the council so I can make sure your citizen voice comes to the multi-sig and everyone's aware of this and you feel like you all got to say.
Hmm.
But some sub-DAO might not have someone with your background and your skills or your abilities. So that person never came forward to say, hey, I want to be that.
Hmm.
So it's really up to the sub-DAO to decide who's coming forward and what they're offering,
Hmm.
what they're trying to do, and why they want to be in this role. And then your system NFT speaks of like, yeah, that would be amazing. That we would love to have someone doing this. And maybe someone wants to just be on the finance. Like, guys, I'll track everything. I'll be tracking market data.
Hmm.
I'm going to have this all in this kind of spreadsheet. You're going to all get to see what's trade, what's going, what you should be doing. I'm going to help organize people. Someone might want to deal like maybe someone speaks like 5 languages and they're like, I want to be part of like the trade organization. I'll talk to these other sub DAOs. I'll work out deals with them,
Hmm.
build friendships, stuff like that. It's really up to the skills you have and who kind of comes forward.
Hmm.
And they're not permanent roles either. So if you find someone's not fulfilling their duties, not doing a good job, same thing. You can kind of vote people out and bring in somebody new. It's really the people kind of speak for that. But it's really on how you want to run, which I think is the most exciting things that you will see different sub DAOs run differently by these choices is the way
Hmm.
it should be. So I think it needs to be like that instead of just like a predefined role that, hey, you're head of trade. Hey, you're the minister of this. Because then you just feel like everyone has to run the same duties in every sub DAO and it's just who does that
Right.
job better. Well, this one is you're figuring out what skill sets do you have and how do we make this go forward, right?
Hmm.
And I never even thought of that propaganda role until we just talk now, but now I feel like, oh man, that would be actually pretty exciting as like some type of role in your sub DAO now, the head of propaganda, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure whether to be flattered or concerned that in discussing with me, you felt a head of propaganda was necessary for the game, but we'll take it. All
yeah,
ideas are
yeah.
good ideas. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
very,
yeah.
very good. So,
Mm,
we talk about the cities progressing and building, and one of the
mhm.
things that you shared in the ETH Lizards AMA, I think it was, is there's no winning condition for this game, right? And this is a little
No.
bit different from a traditional 4X where you've got victory conditions, and there might be a variety of ways to achieve that.
Yeah.
But essentially, you're still trying to win the game, to take over the world, and when
Yeah.
we think about game theory, you have two different types of game. You've got finite games and infinite games, and
Yeah.
the point of an infinite game is just to stay in and to keep playing and to keep going, and that's really the type of game that I think Civitas is trying to build here.
Yeah.
One of the pieces that was really interesting to me that you kind of alluded to is the potential for cities to be able to go interstellar. And I had asked, I think, in our Discord at some point that is there going to be like a level up or like an ascension type of mechanic where like your city can it just becomes so good that like you level up and start again on a new world, or like do you actually go global and eventually go on to other planets? So should I call dibs on one of the early land plots on Mars, or is this still theoretical? Like how committed are
It's
you guys to this as the
it's
next stage?
it's discussed because I think we had a very good question on the Illuvium AMA when someone asked some question about the planning. and it's said like you just need to kind of think of everything, even if you're not ready for it, you're not gonna touch it for years. Just think about it, talk about it, list it in a document, a schedule, something, and just have it there so you know it's at least it's there somewhere on the radar. So if you're thinking about it, there's these goals that exist. So
Hmm.
we talked very early because again, we had a pitch to our own team, and that was a very early question. Someone asked, like, "Well, how do you win? Like, what do you do? Like, where does this go, guys?" And even then we're like, okay, well, we have options, right? And
Hmm.
we were already kind of thinking about what does winning mean in micro wins, like advancing one sub DAO from ancient culture to Bronze Age or some other kind of era. What does that win look like?
Hmm.
And I think these are arm races, and I definitely want to have like goals of not just advancing because it acts as another layer of crafting and new NFTs and things you can build because you're advancing technology. There should be like rewards that come out to a city for achieving certain goals, right? And some advancements might happen in a different path. Advancement shouldn't be just because you crafted to a certain point. Oh, hey, you made this axe, you now moved over to this era. Some things might be through knowledge or literature or science or production or other things. So advancing might have different paths to take to get there. But when a sub-DAO happens, you all feel like you won something. So if you look at the history then of a sub-DAO, maybe it's at that point we're at that cyberpunk era,
Hmm.
but this sub-DAO won different achievement awards in the Bronze Age, in the modern era, and then this era. So different sub-DAOs might be winning in different eras. So it's like your success isn't just you're playing. There should be like a history, your legacy of things you've accomplished. So
Hmm.
we also want to make sure there's micro winning, just not the game ending win. Like you
Right.
did hit these milestones and these achievements. It's like getting a server first in WoW or something,
Hmm.
right? You
Yeah.
got these
Yeah.
server first, you did these things. That's like a micro win that your guild feels like a proud. But your sub DAOs could
Hmm.
have these records that you accomplish these things, and the citizens who are part of that, that's with them on the chain that they were a part of these kind of
Hmm.
achievements too, which I think is it's one of the cool things about Web3 of having these things there. But now if you start thinking like, well, how advanced can you get just on Earth, right? Like how advanced
Hmm.
can you go? Do you go below? Do you go above? Like what is it?
Hmm.
And definitely I think space is obviously exciting to me. I'm a big nerd, so I love these kind of ideas of these things. And the way I would probably see it right now is, Earth, you always have your sub-DAO city, and that's kind of protected. Like I said, we're not doing P versus P where you attack other cities. That's kind of your hub. And then everything else is kind of like a key point of interest that you're trying to
Hmm.
claim and you're trying to hold. Maybe you're holding some point, and that point you're holding, maybe you can get different resources or other things from it. I see space as like a giant point of interest.
Hmm.
So you're not necessarily coming out and you just automatically have land on this planet or this moon, but asteroid belts, other things like that, you want to be claiming and holding it.
Hmm.
And so it's almost like you have a peace treaty on Earth, like, okay, we're not going to destroy our cities. But space is no man's land. It's who
Hmm.
can take it, who can own it. And that's really where the politics of ownership and everything else, where the lines get redrawn to what you're trying to claim for parts of space and resources. So we've obviously not got to the point of like making decisions or deciding that, but
Hmm.
we've had that kind of just a little bit of jams and thinking about like what would be there. Because yeah, it's a game that the politics and the things are going to swift and change based on what happens, and your council members will play a big part of that. If you find out you have council members that just don't play nice with others, that's going to impact your progress, right? So it's really about those kind of social interactions. And I think as the game comes out and we see how people interact with each other and how this develops, I'm sure we'll come right back to the drawing board and redesign or rethink a lot of those ideas and how we actually see these things are unfolding.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It strikes me that you, as you mentioned, you can kind of go down, you can go up, you can go underwater, you can go to
Yeah.
the middle of a volcano. You can have a floating city. Whatever
Yeah.
that looks like on the planet, and then um, virtually limitless outside of the confines of Earth.
Yeah.
So when we think about the world and the geography, I think we talked about this in one of the recent AMAs too. Uh, what's that balance between sort of sea, land, air exploration and travel? You know, how do you envision building these kind of mechanics into a game that's really more co-op focused, and you wouldn't want to necessarily disadvantage a particular city because they're in the middle of an island or on, you know, over water or whatever. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I don't think we've got to the point to say this is exactly how that balancing is going to work, but there is a few things that are at least important to us that are kind of the rules in terms of like what we want as goals. But one thing that is important to us is there is a travel time in the sense that, you know, you're not like physically walking out of your sub DAO to walk to another sub DAO. You're doing things in geolocation, but that's just kind of content we see around you and you have experiences. You're not literally walking into your sub DAO or walking into another because, you know, I could be living in Singapore, but I could actually be part of a New York sub DAO, for example. So you're not really like locked anywhere geolocation, but say I'm in Singapore and I'm part of that New York sub DAO, and maybe there's a Miami sub DAO, maybe there's a Toronto one. So these are generally like Toronto, New York, not too far. So maybe I want to trade more often with Toronto to get some goods that I need because maybe it only takes 30 minutes for my goods to come. So you will physically be seeing trade happening around the world, you know, different types of trade. And those trades will get faster and better, you know, depending on maybe trade agreements. Maybe they kind of invest in better trade routes. You know, maybe you're kind of doing things that you're kind of advancing in your skill tree, or you're advancing in a new era. So as you're moving through different eras, the tools and things for you for transportation increases. So there will be a strategy early on that you might want to strategize partnering with sub DAOs closer to you, which feels very natural that like when we found our first partners you trade with, it's people you could get to easily, right? You know, we were trading with who was close to us and getting the goods from them and
Right.
advancing our society and moving things forward. Later, obviously, the people close to you became your biggest threats because they're too close to you. So that's always like that interesting balance between the closest people you traded with, but they also
Mhm.
became your enemies. But as you sort of like advance and move out, you're going to be more willing or wanting to trade with people farther than you because the travel time is less. But you won't be restricted. So you could be an example where, you know, I'm in New York and someone's all the way in, you know, Mexico City. And that's a very far travel time, but I'm fine. Maybe I'm buying all my goods that I need and it's going to take 12 hours. It's like, cool, I'm going to go to sleep. They'll be there tomorrow kind of
Mhm.
thing. So you can make that kind of balance of, do I need it now or will I just need it? Or, hey, this is a
Mhm.
really good deal. I can just buy it from
Mm.
this, you know, the Mexico City sub DAO, and I'm just going to resell it in my own sub DAO because I'm
Yeah.
just going to make profit because you're just a master at buying and selling off the markets. Because
Arbitrage.
you have to,
Yeah.
yeah, because you have to remember, like you can buy off any market in the world or any sub DAO, unless there's like a trade restriction where you're banned from
Mm.
buying from a certain one, which is bad relationships. But you're not like prohibited from buying anywhere in the world. You just have those kind of travel distances and maybe a few other things with it. But you can only sell in yours. So if you're
Mm.
really that person who wants to like master like the equivalent of the guy who just masters the WoW auction house and just buys and sells all day and they're just making profit and just reselling, you're going to be doing that on a huge level
Mm.
because you're going to be seeing how one good is sold and this sub DAO was completely different
Mm.
on another one, but there's a demand for it, or you really see the markets changing and someone's tracking all this, and now you're like, I'm just going to buy all this stuff up and I'm going to just hold this
Mm.
because there is also certain off-chain resources which are finite. And so some only found in geolocation, and it's a controlled amount. So you can really be a master of a global market
Mhm.
if you really want to be that kind of trader, which again goes into that play styles we talk about. You might have someone's like, I have no time to do anything except trading, and I'm just a
Mhm.
trader.
Yeah.
And which I think is which, you know, they're gonna have a huge influence in the game potentially.
Sure. So and as someone who was admittedly a trader in WoW on the auction house, like you mentioned,
Okay.
will you have the opportunity to have sort of mods or add-ons or something in game to help you track whether it's prices or development times, or do you envision most of those being built, outside of the game for the community?
Maybe I could say that.
Okay.
We're definitely talking internally that we're not going to have the game like playable in a web browser or anything like that. But maybe we can like carve out a chunk of that, which is
Mm-hmm.
access to the markets, and have that
Mm.
just access through
Okay.
a website. So while like playing your game and the building and other
Mhm.
things is a little bit too kind of complex for like what we're building to give it the experience that we would want efficiently on a browser, we do
Mhm.
have maybe ideas of like having windows that let you get access to the markets or other type of
Mm.
trading or other kind of things like that just from a website.
Diplomatic
So you can't,
relations maybe, and
yeah,
like
still
council
understanding
structures.
like, oh,
Yeah.
can I vote on something in my
Mhm.
sub-DAO? I don't have to like, oh, I can't get to my computer, or I'm in a meeting, it can't be on my phone or
Right.
something, or whatever reason might be that you can maybe access
Mm.
certain features through a browser. Um, so I think the moment we have something on a browser and you're accessing market data on sales, there's probably ways to kind of have that pulled out, where people can kind of find their own ways of,
Mm.
some data visualization for
Mm.
that, for their own tracking. It's a little bit too early for that, but like we've at least thinking of ways to make sure you can access certain parts in different ways.
Mm.
So I don't think we'd be against it. I think we're pretty happy to know if the community really wants to get into tracking and doing things. And that might be like why someone might join the council and the sub-DAO. Because like, look, guys, I built this own tool. I'm tracking
Mhm.
all this stuff. I'm basically giving you guys market data to make good trades and buy things
Yeah.
if you want to be that person.
Yeah, I think I just heard about 1,000 little indie developers fist bump because they're super
Yeah.
excited now about building some of their mods and integrating with an API or something that you put out.
Something we're definitely like way too early. And I'm sure like my engineers, if they heard this, they're like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Don't say this. But
Yeah.
I think we're supportive of doing it. And I
Mhm.
think the idea of like having community make things that they can kind of, track things and show things, I think is cool. I think we'd want to
Mhm.
support that. So all I know is like we'd be supportive of it. We just need to find out, where does that fit into our roadmap?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of some of your engineers, give a shout out to your team. I think they're doing a
Yeah.
great job. We've seen a lot of the the art design and
Yeah.
development, and a lot of the gameplay and mechanics are really really exciting. Tell us a little bit about your team size, your development, and in Web3 gaming. Runway is important. So how well capitalized are you for the next years? Because we want to make sure the game launches and we're able to get into it before you would have to do any additional capital raises or anything. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that positioning for Civitas.
So we were like I said, a pre-existing company. We're not a startup that just formed just to sort of make a game for the first time and raise. Directive Games has been fully functional and running on its own for the last 7 years. Like we're not a new company, so we're established. We've been there making products and working in the space. We raised quite a large round, especially for the end of 2021. We raised 20 million, and I think when we did that, our strategy wasn't like, hey, let's just raise as much as we can. It was really like, hey, look, we don't want to do another raise in 6 months or 8 months. The market is really unpredictable. Like let's raise to what we need that we can kind of get the game to where we want before we kind of have to think of that. And we're very kind of mindful on the team size we have to accomplish that. Definitely games isn't a thing where more is always better, in terms of team size. You lose a lot of just the culture on a games team if you just get too many people, and making decisions get kind of more difficult. And also making decisions if you made the wrong choice before on something. You want the ability that you might think something's fun, but you don't know it's fun until you actually try it. And you don't want to be like, well, now the team's so big, we have 30 guys that need this thing to work to get
Mm.
them working, otherwise it's wasted. Because then you tend to stick with bad decisions just to kind of keep the team busy.
Mhm.
So we definitely want to be at a size that we have more like small pockets of micro teams.
Mm.
So we have a very amazing backend team that we have our own proprietary tech of things that we're supporting for AR, things that we're kind of supporting called Camo, which is like our backend in terms of like how we're sort of building this single world. Like I said before with the AR side, so we have these micro pockets of teams that work on different things and they sort of function like on their own. Obviously, we have people who overlap across multiple teams, kind of ensuring like the vision stays there. Like myself and other members that are there just to make sure, like, hey, this is like the product vision. But we kind of let them kind of run on its own thing so they can kind of stay very agile and just kind of own their parts of the game and move it forward. So we don't have that. So our team is over 50 people right now, but it's not 50 people are working on one thing.
Mm.
And so we have like the team right now that's kind of working on like the chosen and getting those assets done, the animation, the rigging, and there's just still a lot of engineering work behind that for the tools needed. We're very much into a lot of procedural pipelines with like Houdini and Unreal Engine. So we obviously have support structures building that. But at the same time, we have a team all the way behind that working on gameplay,
Mm.
making sure just the engine, we can make a build every day. We can play, hey, the UI is in, hey, the land is loading, hey, there's a front end. Just making sure things are working. So it's important that you stay agile enough, all these things move. So we're still hiring, but I think we're not hiring. There's no critical hires needed. So
Mm.
we're not like, hey, we can't finish this game unless we get X. We just have like an open thing because we're always looking for great engineers or great designers or for great artists. So we'll constantly have opening just in case that kind of special person kind of comes in. And I just kind of tweeted like an article that just got released a couple of days ago about some of the new members on our team. And you can see we're bringing in a lot of rock stars like onto it that we want to make sure that they're. But we definitely even open the door to a lot of really smart kind of juniors that come in that people are
Mm.
hungry. Because like I said, I've been in the game space a long time, but there's lots of things I have learned just by like a new hire, first
Mhm.
person out of school, first time they work on a game. And, you know, part of the games is a fun because you kind of learn a little bit from everybody.
Mm.
So we're always looking, but there's no kind of critical hires that we have. When it comes to like runway and like where do we see in the future, I think right now we have no plans to raise at all. We don't have any sort of goal right now to raise again. Now, that doesn't mean we won't, but I think what's critical for us is before we sort of even look at raising, that we have a very good snapshot of what the gameplay looks like and it's playable and you really get a feel of what we're going. And I think
Mhm.
once we've sort of locked down that and we really understand like, hey, this part's fun, the community sees what we're going to be playing and what you're doing. And then we potentially at some point might look at a raise again just for that more longer term kind of, security with it. But right now for the next year or two, I don't really see ourselves raising as a priority. And again, that's kind of why we raised 20 million, that we didn't have to stress ourselves in this situation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think getting to Mars is not cheap, and so it won't be
No,
in Civitas either. So
nope. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, as I think we've heard over this interview, you're very well connected with studios and developers in Web 2 and Web 3. So one of the big interesting questions that I've got is: are we going to see Web 2 gaming companies and studios realize the risk that Web 3 poses to them and actually make the transition to Web 3, whether it's internally or through maybe an acquisition, M&A type of approach,
Mm.
or as we've often seen in other industries, will that adjustment and change to the underlying business model be really too much of a loss of control for them to make that adjustment, and they just won't be able to come over?
I think, and again, this is like mostly my view. So, I'm definitely not gonna say other people are saying is wrong. Everyone has like really good opinions. There's a lot of smart people in the space that have really good views. My personal view is Web3 is really appealing right now for I think indie and mid-sized studios,
Mm.
and for different reasons. So I think if you're like an indie or a mid-sized studio, I think Web3 is definitely something you should look at. And I understand there's, bad PR and some are just scared to go
Mhm.
into it and lose the community they've grown. But I don't think it's something you should necessarily be scared of. And I think you stick with the same focus of making a great game and sticking with your vision and having a way that that works in Web3. Don't fall into the trap that you have to see kind of these, bad actors in the space with like really bad, token designs and just looking to exit on people. Really think about a great game and why it's fun. And
Mhm.
I think that's gonna be the best thing for the space, is really saying, hey, look, you can do this. And I think there's a lot of negative things also in traditional gaming. And there's a reason why there's more publishers than game studios. And the relationship in traditional gaming from a indie to a mid-sized studio with at least most publishers. There's some really great publishers out there that are trying to not be that also, but it's really difficult space to kind of be in, that you really need a publisher and they really sort of control the fate of many studios. And this is kind
Mhm.
of how people like EA and others used to buy up companies all the time, because they kind of trapped a lot of studios with this publisher relationship. And
Mhm.
so I think in Web3, there's a chance for freedom. And what I mean by that is it's a space that you have more of a direct relationship with your community. It's a relationship that if you sort of have the right cap table and the right partners involved that have the same shared vision as you can almost get the same services you could get out of a publisher with your cap table. And you have this chance to make your game and really sort of control your fate more. And you're not sort of like under the grasp of like a publisher deciding everything for you. Now, when it comes to larger studios, I think right now they're interested in Web3, but it doesn't make sense to them right now. One, I guess that some side will be scared of the bad PR, and you saw that
Mhm.
with Ubisoft,
It'll be
which
yeah.
was too bad. I think they were quite brave to even just try it, but they got the bad PR. But on the second hand, I just think the revenue models that exist in Web3 right now just aren't mature enough for larger studios, that it just makes
Mhm.
sense for them. They have a very, very high burn rate, right? So
Right.
they have to be very more clear with their ROI in terms of what they're
Mhm.
trying to earn. And right now, with traditional gaming, through a premium purchase to in-app purchases to ad revenue to subscription models to like little VIP models, or whatever it is, a combination of all of those in one, they just have a lot more kind of access to generate
Mhm.
revenue and through DLCs and multiple sequels every year.
Mhm.
Whatever it might be, they just have that access more to really kind of know, hey, we have a proven model to generate X.
Mhm.
And I think right now for Web3, it's just the gamer base isn't there enough for them to want it, and it's not mature enough, which I think is
Mhm.
great news for us. It really lets us kind of have studios that are really caring and passionate about what they're making and really trying to define the space to what it is. And we're not just getting like a new FIFA every year in Web3.
Mhm.
So I think it's good news, but I would want, and I am seeing it. Like I do talk to a lot of traditional game studios, like the small to indie ones that I talk about, and they're very interested in the space. I think as they sort of learn that, oh, hey, I can make a game and I don't even need a token, or hey, I can just make a game like this, and that's fine. Like, yeah, it totally can work, and you can
Mhm.
structure it like this. It's really up to you to decide if it works for your game design.
Mhm.
So you don't have to have like a game like Street Fighter with a token model. You don't need that.
Mhm.
Or, there's a lot of ways they can approach it. They don't have to exactly kind of do what everyone else is doing in the space, and it
Mhm.
can work. So I think it's like really up to them. And I'm a huge component of like, we should promote and we should have great PR and really engage with other game studios. And I think that's the number one people we should be kind of engaging with, is game
Mhm.
developers, and try to talk them through their concerns in the space, or talk them through their worries and what can happen. And if they can kind of understand that, I think they'd be encouraged, because
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in that, because that's exactly what we had to do in Directive Games. We have amazing, talented developers who've been in the space, and all they ever saw was the bad PR. And so when we had to say, "Hey, we're making a game, we're coming into the space," a lot of them were like, "Wait, what? We're this now?" And so we had to walk them through the game
Mhm.
design, every step of like why Web3, how this can work,
Mhm.
how we're different from what you're seeing here. And then once they started building and they got it, they're like, "Oh, this is actually really cool."
Mhm.
So, I think it's all of our jobs as developers in Web3, yourself included, and in the community, to kind of be that voice. And you know, shame the bad, promote the good, right? And I
Mhm.
think we have to do it together because even in traditional gaming, we do that. You know, when Diablo Immortal came, I'm a huge Blizzard fan. You know, I got into my first PC was because of Diablo 1, right?
Mhm.
You know, Pentium 2, that was it. Like that got me into it. And, you know, I'm a huge fan and of what they've made in the past. But,
Mhm.
you know, games like Diablo Immortal are not things we should be like promoting when you to spend $100,000 just to level up your character. And there's bad models in traditional gaming. So I think in any space we're in for gaming, we should always be shaming the bad and promoting the good.
Mm.
And you know, we take that quite serious here in terms of like how people view Civitas. And when people ask us about, hey, do I have to buy an NFT? Do I have to have a token to play the game? You know, it was a first day decision that we need a free to play path in the game. And there's no, you're not gated by a paywall. You really want you to come in and play it, see if this is the game for you, which we're confident people will have fun. And then they'll go, hey, this is something I want to stay in. I want to be more involved in the game, and they have that option. But yeah, I think it's all of our
Mhm.
responsibility.
Yeah, no, I for sure agree. And one of the important things I remind developers and builders about is each of these elements in Web3 is a tool, right?
Yeah.
And so tokens and DAOs and NFTs and so on, these are all tools. And if you're
Yeah.
building, a game that doesn't require a guild, you don't put guilds in. If you
Yeah.
are building a game that doesn't require a marketplace or PvP or any elements of gaming, you just don't put that in if it doesn't make sense. And that's where
Right.
I think we have to get to, is where we look at the tool belt and say, okay, what are the Web3 elements that make sense for me based on the design, based on what is the actual goal that I'm trying to build in here around my title, so that I get that immersive gameplay and experience that we want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. So Kent, we're gonna start wrapping up here.
Okay.
Are there any additional things that you want to share with our community? This is going to be launching as we're finishing up the Chosen Mint, and we're
Mhm.
headed towards the next parts of your roadmap. So, what else do you want to maybe leave us with from this interview?
Just get engaged with us. You know, we're one big thing, and I think, you know, Annie knows this. We're super transparent with the team when it comes to questions. We don't hide from anything. There's no secrets on the team. We leak all the day in Discord because we someone asks us anything, we just answer it. But that's part of like our motto that, you know, we're building this game with community because it is a community driven game, and we really want everyone involved with us to feel they're a part of this. And it's not just lip service. We really want that, and we really make sure we answer those questions. And you know, I've said quite a few times to members of Discord, like I'm working for you guys, like I'm building this game for you. So if you have a question, just ask, and I will always answer it, you know, truthfully.
Hmm.
So get involved with us because I think we're building something that um, is going to be groundbreaking. I think when we get this out, that we're all going to look back like, oh, this is why there's a Web3 game. This is like what you can actually do in the space. And there's a lot of passionate people behind this, making sure that this expectation is hit, and we're kind of moving away from what we've kind of seen in the space so far. And I think it's something you want to be a part of. And I would love to have you on the journey with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll have in the description from this video links to Civitas, to Discord, and their site and white paper and so on. So that sounds great. Ken, I
Amazing.
can't say enough how much I appreciate you joining us. As I've mentioned publicly on several of our calls and spaces, Civitas is one of the projects that I'm most excited about, both personally and from a professional standpoint, in this space, because we need
Mhm.
to have some really good games emerge that have good gameplay, that show how Web3 can be integrated in a way that's meaningful to really push the space forward. And I think you and the team are doing that. So really looking forward to
Appreciate that.
seeing what you guys come up with next. And we'll be in touch.
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate everything.